Wait, the train has stopped. I'm going after it.
About 25 miles.
Elastigirl?
What about it fails? Okay, how much time?
Less than 2 minutes. There's a shortcut. Cut through the culvert up ahead.
Incredibles 2 is an animated superhero action and family comedy movie made by Pixar Animation Studios and released by Walt Disney Pictures into movie theaters worldwide. The movie officially came out on the 15th of June 2018 in the United States of America. It was directed by Brad Bird, who also directed the very first Incredibles movie that came out back in 2004. Brad Bird is one of the most respected and beloved filmmakers working in the world of animation and live-action cinema. He is the person behind The Iron Giant, which is one of the most emotionally powerful animated films ever made. He also made Ratatouille, which is another Pixar masterpiece about a rat who wants to cook in a French restaurant. And of course, he made Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which is a live-action spy thriller that many people consider the best film in that entire franchise. So when Brad Bird was announced as returning to direct Incredibles 2, audiences around the entire world let out a collective cheer of excitement and relief. This was not going to be a cash grab sequel handed to a different director who did not understand the original vision. This was the original creator coming back with a new story to tell. The movie belongs to the superhero genre, but calling it only that would be doing it a great disservice. It is also a family comedy. It is a domestic drama. It is a social commentary. It is a coming of age story for at least two of its characters. It is a working parent story. It is an identity crisis story. It manages to be all of these things at the same time while also delivering some of the most spectacular animated action sequences ever put on a movie screen. That combination of emotional depth and surface level entertainment is the signature achievement of the best Pixar films. And Incredibles 2 sits comfortably among the best of them. The film is rated PG, which means it is suitable for children but deeply enjoyable and meaningful for adults. Parents who grew up watching the first Incredibles in 2004 were now bringing their own children to see this sequel in 2018. That generational dimension added an extra layer of emotion to the experience for many viewers. They were not just watching a movie, they were sharing something they loved with a new generation. In terms of what kind of release this was, Incredibles 2 was a full and proper theatrical release. It was not a streaming movie, it was not a Netflix original, it was not a direct to video production. It opened in thousands of movie theaters around the world on the same day, and it was treated with all the prestige and marketing power that a major event film from Disney and Pixar receives. There were marketing campaigns, toys, promotional partnerships, and an enormous level of public anticipation. This was a big movie by every definition. It is also not part of a shared cinematic universe in the way that Marvel movies are all connected to each other. The world of The Incredibles is its own self-contained universe. It exists in an alternate version of our world where people with extraordinary abilities, called supers, once lived openly and used their powers to help society. But then things changed. Public opinion turned against them. Lawsuits followed. Supers were blamed for property damage and collateral destruction caused during their heroic efforts. Eventually, the government stepped in and created what was known as the Supers Relocation Program, which forced every superhero to give up their public identity and live as a normal civilian. Supers were not illegal in the sense that having powers was criminalized, but acting as a superhero in public was against the law. They had to hide who they were. This setup was established beautifully in the first film, and Incredibles 2 continues directly from it. There is no time jump, there is no recapping through flashbacks. The movie begins at the exact moment that the first movie ended. The continuity is seamless. The Parr family, who are the Incredibles, consist of 5 members. Bob Parr is the father, a big strong man whose super ability is essentially unlimited physical strength and a very high level of invulnerability. He is Mr. Incredible. Helen Parr is the mother, a woman whose body can stretch and reshape and extend itself to extraordinary lengths and into practically any form. She is Elastigirl. Their teenage daughter is Violet, who can turn herself completely invisible and can generate powerful circular force field bubbles that can protect people or be used as projectile weapons. Their young son is Dash, a boy perhaps 10 or 11 years old, who can run at superhuman speeds that leave visible shock waves and who can run across the surface of water. And their baby is Jack, who at the end of the first film revealed he had some kind of powers when he fought the villain Syndrome's robot, but whose full ability set was still completely unknown. Their best friend and fellow super is Lucius Best, who goes by the name Frozone. He can generate and control ice, creating it from the moisture in the air around him and using it to create slides and barriers and projectiles. He is charming, stylish, and loyal to the Parr family. Together, this is the world we are returning to, a world of hidden superheroes trying to find their place in a society that does not want them. A world where a family of extraordinary people are just trying to live ordinary lives and keep each other together. Now, let us walk through this movie in complete and thorough detail. The movie begins with no warm-up period. There is no gentle introduction or recap of the first film. Brad Bird trusts that his audience knows who these people are and what they can do, and he plunges directly into action. The very first scene picks up at the exact moment the Underminer punched through the street at the end of the first Incredibles. The Underminer is driving an enormous drilling machine through the underground layers of the city. He is a theatrical and somewhat absurd villain, dressed in a miner's outfit and speaking in a dramatic booming voice. He announces to the surface that he is at war with peace and happiness, and that no one can stop him. The Parr family is already in costume. They suit up and go immediately. Bob and Helen and Violet and Dash spring into action. They leave Jack locked in the car with strict instructions not to unlock the door for anyone. The opening sequence is energetic and chaotic and very funny. The family has to manage multiple problems at the same time. The drilling machine is causing enormous damage to the street and to buildings. The Underminer is also threatening the city's bank vault, which he wants to steal. Dash and Violet work together to try to stop the machine. Bob goes after the drilling apparatus directly, using his strength to try to physically stop it. Helen stretches and maneuvers through the destruction. But things go wrong almost immediately. Violet tries to contain the machine with her force fields, but the machine is simply too large and too powerful. Dash runs circles around it trying to find a weak point but cannot locate one. Bob ends up hanging on to the outside of the drilling machine as it plows forward through the city, unable to stop it with brute force alone. Meanwhile, Frozone arrives to help and takes charge of helping civilians get out of the way. He creates ice bridges and barriers to redirect people away from danger. The Underminer eventually escapes. He drills away underground and vanishes. The bank vault is destroyed in the process, its contents scattered. The city is left with massive damage to streets and buildings and infrastructure. The Underminer got away, and all the destruction happened on the family's watch. By any objective measure, the mission was a failure, even though they saved lives in the process. This is an important choice by Brad Bird. The movie begins with the heroes not winning. They showed up, they worked hard, people are safe, but the villain escaped and the city is worse off for the battle. This is not the triumphant reintroduction you might expect from a superhero sequel. It is a deliberately complicated and somewhat deflating start, and that complication is the engine of everything that follows. After the battle, the family is approached by government agents. Rick Dicker is the man who has been their government handler for years, the person who manages their cover identities and protects them. He is tired and frustrated. He informs them that because of the destruction caused by the battle, the politicians are moving to shut down the Super's relocation program entirely. The government support structure that has protected superheroes will be gone. No more government funded housing assistance. No more identity protection. No more official help of any kind. Supers will be on their own. He gives them 2 weeks in a motel while they figure out what to do next. This is the low point at which the story actually begins. The family is sitting in a cramped and slightly depressing motel room. Bob and Helen are lying on one of the beds, staring at the ceiling. Violet is in the bathroom sulking. Dash is watching television. Jack is in a playpen. The contrast between who these people are in their super identities and where they are sitting right now is played not for comedy but for honest sadness. These are capable, extraordinary people who are completely stuck. The discussion between Bob and Helen in the motel room that night is one of the most honest conversations the film offers. They talk quietly so the kids cannot hear. Bob is upset and frustrated, but he is also, underneath that, genuinely confused. He believed that their appearance at the end of the first film, when they acted as heroes in public, would change things. He thought the world would see what supers could do and demand that the laws change. Instead, nothing changed. The laws are still the same, and now even the small protective infrastructure they had is being taken away. Helen is more pragmatic. She is not less frustrated than Bob, but she is more focused on solving the immediate problem. They need a plan. They need income. They need somewhere to live. These are the actual problems right in front of them. There is a moment in this conversation where Bob says something that reveals his deepest feeling. He says that doing good is the right thing to do regardless of whether it is legal or not. And Helen responds with the kind of calm but firm correction that a partner gives to someone they love but who they know is not seeing clearly. She says that their children's safety and stability has to come first. They cannot simply act as heroes and ignore the consequences for the family. This exchange sets up the central tension between Bob and Helen that runs throughout the whole first half of the movie. Bob is a man of action and conviction. Helen is a woman of practicality and responsibility. Neither of them is wrong. They are just prioritizing different things. Before this tension can fully develop into a real conflict, Lucius arrives. He has received a message from someone and he wants Bob and Helen to come meet this person with him. The person is Winston Deavor. Winston Deavor is not what you might expect from a powerful tech billionaire. He is warm and enthusiastic and genuinely emotional about superheroes in a way that reads as completely sincere. He grew up in a house where his father had personal phone numbers for superhero contacts, people he could call in an emergency instead of just dialing the police. His father believed in supers completely, and that belief was part of the fabric of Winston's childhood. When supers went underground, Winston's father lost those connections, and then one night their home was robbed. His father tried to call his superhero contacts out of old habit, and of course, no one answered because they were all in hiding. He tried to find safety in a panic room, but the panic room mechanism jammed. He died. Winston's mother lost the will to live after that and died not long afterward. Winston does not tell this story with bitterness. He tells it with a kind of resolute sadness. He has decided that the way to honor his parents is not to be angry but to change things so what happened to them cannot happen again. His plan is the result of years of thinking and preparation and the considerable resources of his technology company, DevTech. The plan is simple in concept but brilliant in its implications. He wants to change the public's perception of superheroes not by lobbying politicians or running advertisements, but by showing people the truth of what superheroes do through the hero's own perspective. He has developed cameras that can be fitted onto superhero suits and broadcast what the superhero sees and experiences in real time. He believes that if people can see what a superhero actually goes through, the choices they make, the risks they take, the genuine good they do, public opinion will shift organically. And if public opinion shifts, the politicians will follow. The plan has a spokesperson. Winston has chosen Elastigirl. The choice is not random. Evelyn, who has done the research and analysis, explains it clearly. She has looked at the history of super battles and damage reports and she has reached a concrete conclusion. Mr. Incredible causes significantly more destruction than Elastigirl does. When Bob fights, things break and collapse. When Helen fights, she finds ways to solve problems using her powers that do not require smashing through walls. She is the better candidate for a campaign that is trying to rebuild public trust. This is delivered matter-of-factly and professionally, but there is no way it does not sting Bob. He is being told that he is not the right choice, that his wife is better for this job than he is, that his way of doing things is part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Bob hides his reaction extremely well in the moment. He says the right things. He agrees that Helen should do it. He volunteers to stay home with the kids. He presents himself as fully supportive. And he is supportive. But there is something else happening underneath the surface too, something he will have to deal with honestly over the course of the film. Helen agrees to the plan. She is hesitant in the way that anyone who has put their real identity away for years would be hesitant. She has spent a long time being a mother and a wife. She is not sure where Elastigirl fits in her life anymore, but when Evelyn shows her the new suit with its camera fitted into the visor and its updated design, something in her responds. She puts it on and something clicks back into place. The deal is made. Winston will provide a place for Helen to stay. He will provide equipment and support. He will handle the media and the public relations side of things. Helen will do the actual work as a super. And the plan is to film her in action and get that footage in front of as many people as possible. This is where the movie makes its boldest structural choice. Most superhero sequels would follow the main hero into their new adventure and show the family waiting worriedly at home in brief cutaway scenes. Incredibles 2 dedicates a substantial and very intentional amount of its runtime to showing Bob at home with the kids while Helen is out in the world being a hero. This is not filler, this is the emotional heart of the film. Bob's first day alone with the kids goes about as badly as it could without anyone getting seriously hurt. Dash has homework that Bob cannot understand because it uses a completely new mathematical approach that was developed after Bob was in school. Bob stares at the equations with genuine bafflement and that feeling. A smart, capable man being completely defeated by his 10-year-old's homework is instantly relatable to any adult who has tried to help their child with modern schoolwork. Violet has her own crisis that has nothing to do with superhero business on the surface. She had been developing a friendship with a boy at school named Tony Ridinger, and that friendship was moving towards something. Tony had seen something real in her during the events of the first film's aftermath. He had asked her on a date, and then the government erased his memory specifically to protect her identity because he had seen her without her mask. Violet finds out about the memory erasure not from her parents proactively telling her but by accident, when Bob lets it slip in an exhausted and unguarded moment. The impact on Violet is enormous. This is a girl who has spent her entire life hiding herself, turning invisible in the most literal possible sense, because the world felt too big and too bright and too dangerous. She had started to let someone in. She had started to trust. And that was taken from her without anyone asking her permission, without anyone considering that she might have wanted a say in the matter. Her anger at Bob is completely justified. She yells at him. She is hurt and furious. She goes to the bathroom, and when she comes out, she has her superhero suit in her hand, and she walks to the trash can outside the house and she throws it away. She is done. She does not want any part of this. She wants to be normal. She wants the one normal thing she had to still be normal. Bob watches her do this, and he does not try to stop her or argue with her. He knows he was wrong. He carries that guilt quietly. Jack, meanwhile, is just being a baby who needs constant attention and feeding and entertaining and soothing. Bob manages all of this while also dealing with Violet's crisis and Dash's homework, and he is running on very little sleep, and the bags under his eyes get more pronounced as the days go by. There is a wonderful montage of Bob trying to handle everything at once and failing at most of it. He falls asleep at Dash's homework table while they are studying. He burns dinners. He loses track of time. He is not a bad father. He is a very good father who is in over his head and too proud to ask for help. The turning point in the home storyline comes from an unexpected source, Jack. The raccoon scene is one of the most purely entertaining sequences in the entire film. Bob is watching through the window as Jack sits in the backyard in a little enclosed area. A raccoon wanders onto the property and gets into the garbage. Jack becomes fixated on it. What follows is a battle between a baby and a raccoon that is absolutely magnificent in how it escalates. Jack reaches toward the raccoon. The raccoon hisses, and then Jack's eyes start to glow red, and he fires laser beams from his eyes. Bob watches this with his mouth hanging open. The raccoon scrambles and Jack follows it, suddenly bursting into flames. A small baby surrounded by fire, like he is some kind of tiny demon. Then he phases through the fence like a ghost, his body simply passing through solid matter. Then he transforms, his body going rigid and heavy and metallic, into what looks like a tiny stone monster. He grabs the raccoon and the raccoon escapes. Jack floats off the ground and teleports, blinking out of one location and appearing in another. He multiplies into several versions of himself, all of them chasing the raccoon in different directions. The raccoon finally escapes over the fence, and all the Jack duplicates merge back into one, and he looks around, completely satisfied with himself and then starts babbling happily. Bob has watched all of this happen in a span of about 2 or 3 minutes. He stands at the window processing what he just saw. His baby has, by quick count, at least 8 completely different superpowers. He has laser vision. He can catch fire. He can phase through matter. He can transform his body. He can multiply himself. He can levitate. He can teleport. He might have more abilities that have not shown themselves yet. This is overwhelming information, and it is also a problem because Jack has no control over any of it. His powers activate based on his emotions. When he is excited or frustrated or focused, they just happen. He does not choose them. He cannot turn them off. He is a baby with the most potentially dangerous combination of powers of anyone in the family, and he does not even understand object permanence yet. Bob cannot handle this alone. He makes the call. He calls Edna Mode. Edna Mode is one of the great supporting characters in the history of animated film. She is a tiny woman with enormous glasses and a severe black bob haircut who designs superhero costumes with the confidence and authority of a god. She is brilliant and eccentric and completely unwilling to be anything other than exactly who she is. She has no filter. She says exactly what she thinks at all times and has no patience for people who cannot keep up with her. When Bob arrives at her compound with Jack, Edna takes one look at the baby and her entire face changes. Something like tenderness comes over her, which is the last thing you expected to see on Edna Mode's face. She takes Jack for the night. She tells Bob to go home and sleep. And then she studies the baby. The sequence of Edna with Jack is very brief but absolutely perfect. She runs him through tests. She observes his powers. She plays with him. She challenges him. And she is delighted. She says that Jack is not a problem. He is a gift. He is the most extraordinary baby she has ever encountered, and she has finally found a project worthy of her talents. The next morning, she presents Bob with a new suit for Jack. It is a tracking suit with monitors built in to help observe and record which powers activate under which conditions. It also has fireproof material and some basic containment functions. It is beautifully designed, as everything Edna makes is. She hands Jack to Bob along with a complete data analysis of every power she observed during the night. She tells Bob that managing Jack is not about control, it is about communication. Even a baby can begin to understand patterns and responses if you are patient and consistent. She says this with the confidence of someone who has figured out something that has been stumping Bob for days. Bob drives home feeling genuinely better. And that night he begins the work of developing a communication system with Jack, using cookies as rewards and simple signals to help Jack begin to understand when to activate powers and when not to. It is slow and imperfect, but it is a progress. Meanwhile, on the other side of the story, Helen is thriving. Her new base of operations is a spectacular apartment provided by DevTech. It is modern and sleek and beautiful. It has a garage for the new motorcycle they have given her, which is called the Elastigirl and which can split into 2 separate vehicles as needed. The view from the apartment looks out over the city of New Urbane, which is bigger and more modern than Metroville. Helen's first night in the apartment, after getting settled in, she stands at the window looking out at the city and she stretches her arms wide out to her sides, reaching all the way to the walls on either side of the enormous living room. She takes a deep breath, she holds it, and then she lets it out slowly. It is a simple gesture, but it communicates everything. This is a space. This is room. This is freedom to be who she actually is without worrying about what the neighbors might see. She calls home to check in. She talks to Bob. She talks to Violet. She tells Dash good night. She asks about Jack. She listens to the chaos on the other end of the line and laughs and feels guilty about laughing and then laughs again. She is here doing this thing and she misses her family, and she is also genuinely glad to be there. Her first mission as the public face of Winston's campaign does not take long to arrive. The city's new monorail system has been hijacked. The train is running at full speed on a track that ends in an incomplete construction area. If it reaches the end of those tracks, it will fly off and crash into the city below, killing everyone on board. The way Helen handles this problem is a textbook example of creative superhero thinking. She chases the train on her motorcycle, which splits in half at one point to allow her to make a specific maneuver. She stretches ahead of the train along the track and fashions her body into a kind of grappling hook attached to an anchor point, using the physical resistance of her own stretched form to begin slowing the train. The physics of this are somewhat fantastical, but the creativity of the solution is genuinely exciting to watch. She is not smashing through the problem. She is thinking through it and using the specific qualities of her ability to engineer a solution. When she finally brings the train to a stop, the passengers emerge shaken but alive and unharmed. A little girl reaches up and holds Helen's hand. The footage from her suit camera captures all of it. Winston's team immediately broadcast it. The response is enormous. News channels pick it up. Social media erupts with excitement. People are amazed. They have been told for years that superheroes are a problem, a source of destruction and danger. And here is footage from inside a superhero action, showing a woman making impossible split-second decisions with skill and dedication and a complete commitment to keeping innocent people safe. The Elastigirl footage changes the conversation instantly. Winston calls her barely containing his excitement. This is exactly what he hoped for. The plan is working. His sister Evelyn watches the footage from their headquarters with a complicated expression that the camera holds for just a moment longer than strictly necessary. The Screenslaver first makes their presence known in a troubling incident that Elastigirl is called to investigate. A helicopter has been behaving strangely, flying erratically over the city at night. When it comes close enough for Helen to reach, she discovers the pilot inside, who is completely unresponsive to verbal commands. His eyes have a glazed and fixed quality. He is not flying the helicopter consciously. He is being controlled remotely through some mechanism, and he has no awareness of what he is doing. Helen manages to guide the helicopter down safely, protecting both the pilot and the city below, but the incident leaves her unsettled. Someone hypnotized that pilot. Someone used a human being as a puppet and then dropped them into a dangerous situation without any concern for their life. The Screenslaver makes a formal public appearance shortly afterward by hacking into every television and computer screen in New Urbane simultaneously. The broadcast is in a striking visual style, black and white and strobing with an overlaid mask image. The voice that comes through is distorted and mechanical. What the Screenslaver says is not typical villain posturing. There is no demand for ransom. There is no threat of specific violence. Instead, the Screenslaver delivers a philosophical monologue about screens and passivity and the way society has surrendered its agency to entertainment and technology. They talk about how people watch screens instead of acting. How people outsource their thinking and their heroism to others instead of developing their own capacity. How the very act of watching a superhero on a screen is an example of the problem, because it allows you to feel like something heroic is happening while you do absolutely nothing. It is genuinely disturbing because the argument is not entirely wrong. The Screenslaver is talking about things that are real. The specific way the speech is delivered, with calm conviction rather than ranting anger, makes it more unsettling than a typical villain speech. This person believes what they are saying. They have a coherent worldview and they act from it. Helen watches the broadcast with Evelyn beside her. Evelyn's reaction to it is interesting. She is analytical. She is focused on the technical aspects of how the hack was executed. She seems impressed by the sophistication of it even while dismissing the content as dangerous. Helen begins investigating. She follows the trail of the hypnotized pilot and works backward through surveillance footage and technical analysis to narrow down a location for the Screenslaver's signal source. The investigation leads her to an apartment building on the edge of the city. She goes in alone at night. The fight in the Screenslaver's apartment is one of the most deliberately uncomfortable action sequences in the movie. The apartment is an overwhelming sensory space. Every wall has screens on it, all of them playing different footage at different speeds. The lighting, strobes, and flickers. The layout of the space is deliberately disorienting, with no clear visual anchor point. The moment Helen enters the space, she is fighting against her own ability to perceive clearly. The screenslaver is wearing a mask and suit that incorporates small screens into the design, making it extremely difficult to look directly at them. They move with surprising speed and skill. Helen pursues them through the apartment, stretching to grab and reaching to block, and the fight is chaotic and disorienting and genuinely tense. What is interesting about this fight from a filmmaking perspective is that it is designed to make the viewer feel what Helen feels. The strobing lights are actually somewhat uncomfortable to watch. The visual chaos is intentional. You are not meant to enjoy this action sequence in the clean, exciting way you enjoyed the train sequence. You are meant to feel the difficulty and the stress of it. Helen eventually prevails. She catches the screenslaver and unmasks them. The person behind the mask is a young man who delivers pizza for a local restaurant. He looks confused and frightened. He does not seem to understand why he is in this apartment or what has been happening. He is arrested. The case appears to be closed. Winston throws a party to celebrate. Helen is celebrated publicly as the hero who caught the dangerous villain. News coverage is overwhelmingly positive. Winston's campaign is succeeding beyond even his optimistic projections. But something does not sit right with Helen. She replays her memories of the capture and the unmasking. The pizza man seemed genuinely unaware of what he had been doing. That is not the behavior of a manipulative criminal who got caught. That is the behavior of someone who was hypnotized. She brings this concern to Evelyn, who dismisses it as overthinking. The man was caught, case closed. The mission was a success and they should enjoy it. Helen accepts this, at least for now, but the question stays in the back of her mind. Flush with the success of the Elastigirl campaign, Winston moves to the next phase of his plan. He has been using his considerable wealth and influence to build toward a major international event. He has arranged a gathering of ambassadors and politicians and government officials from multiple countries, all of them coming together aboard his enormous luxury yacht, the Everjust, for a summit at which they will sign an international agreement formally legalizing superheroes worldwide. This is the endgame of Winston's dream. Not just getting the law changed in one country, but changing it everywhere simultaneously. A global statement that supers are recognized as valuable and that the days of forcing them into hiding are over. Winston also invites several other superheroes who have been living underground. He wants them to be present at this historic moment. Among them is a young woman named Void, who can create portals, essentially circular holes in space that connect two different locations and allow things or people to pass through. She is young and eager and she idolizes Elastigirl. There are several other supers as well, each with distinct abilities, who have been living secret lives for years and who are deeply moved by the invitation. The night before the summit, something happens that changes everything. Helen has been spending more time with Evelyn, and their friendship has genuinely deepened over the course of the film. Evelyn is interesting and honest and funny in a dry way. She and Helen connect over a shared quality of self-reliance and practicality. Helen trusts her. On this particular night, Evelyn offers Helen a pair of goggles to try, saying they are a new kind of vision technology she has been developing. Helen puts them on. The goggles contain small screens. The screens immediately hypnotize her, and the truth becomes clear. Evelyn Deavor is the screenslaver. This is the moment that recontextualizes every previous scene. Looking back through the film with this knowledge, you can see Evelyn's fingerprints on everything. She designed Helen's suit and therefore knew its camera's range and limitations. She was the one who analyzed the screenslaver signal data and told Helen where to look, meaning she sent Helen to capture the pizza delivery man who was her own hypnotized pawn. She was always in the room where intelligence was being gathered and decisions were being made, which meant she was always able to stay one step ahead. Evelyn explains herself to the now hypnotized Helen with a calm and comprehensive clarity that is both rational and chilling. She tells Helen the truth about her father. The version Winston told earlier about their father trusting supers and dying because they did not answer is not incorrect in its facts, but it is incorrect in its emotional interpretation. Winston took from that story the lesson that supers must be brought back so no one else dies the way their father did. Evelyn took the exact opposite lesson. Her father died because he trusted in other people to save him rather than saving himself. His panic room jammed. He did not know how to override it manually because he had never learned. He spent his life depending on people with extraordinary abilities to handle extraordinary situations instead of preparing himself, and that dependence killed him. Evelyn says she does not blame the supers for not answering. They were in hiding because the law made them hide, but she blames the culture of dependency that supers create. She blames the way that having people with extraordinary abilities walking around solving problems causes everyone else to stop developing their own capability to solve problems. She says that as long as supers exist and are celebrated, society will never fully grow up. People will always be children waiting for someone to come save them. And so, her plan is not just to stop Winston's campaign, her plan is to use the summit as a stage for the ultimate act of sabotage. She has hypnotized Frozone and several of the other supers who were invited aboard the yacht. She intends to use them to attack the world leaders at the summit in front of the cameras. Winston has been so carefully setting up. The footage will show superheroes, the very people Winston has been selling as protectors and heroes, violently threatening the people they were supposed to protect. It will permanently destroy any chance of supers being legalized. The public will not just oppose bringing them back, they will actively demand that something be done to eliminate them entirely. It is a meticulous and deeply personal plan. Evelyn has thought about this for a long time. And the fact that she genuinely likes Helen, that she respects her and sees real qualities in her that she admires, does not stop her. It might even be why she chose to hypnotize Helen herself rather than delegating it. She wanted to be honest with Helen even in the act of betraying her. She wanted Helen to understand the hypogoggles lock in and Helen is gone, replaced by a puppet who will follow Evelyn's instructions. Back at home, Bob is watching the television coverage of the lead up to the summit when something in the broadcast catches his attention. He is watching footage of Helen in the events leading up to the voyage, and something about her body language is wrong. He knows Helen, he knows the way she moves, and what he is seeing on the screen is not quite Helen. It is someone moving in Helen's body but not fully present in it. He also receives a message, a brief and fragmentary communication from Helen that does not quite make sense but that communicates danger. He pieces together what he can and reaches a conclusion. Something has gone wrong. Helen needs help. He does not hesitate. He gets back into his old suit. It has been sitting in the closet and it is a little tight after all the weeks of sitting home and stress eating, which provides a moment of gentle comedy as he wrestles into it. But he gets it on. He is Mr. Incredible again. He goes to tell Violet and Dash. And here is one of the film's most satisfying moments. Violet has already gotten dressed. She has retrieved her suit from the trash. She is standing ready. She does not need to be asked. Her family is in danger and she is a member of this family and she is showing up. The anger and hurt about Tawny, while real and not resolved, does not override her love for her mother. She made her choice. Dash is already vibrating with excitement. He was born for this. They have one problem. Jack has no one to leave him with. Edna is not available on short notice. There are no babysitters in their contact list who know about the family's abilities and can be trusted at this moment. So Jack comes along. They get to the water in a boat that Edna had left them as a gift, a sleek and well-equipped watercraft that carries them toward the yacht at speed. The summit has begun aboard the yacht. World leaders and ambassadors are seated in formal arrangements. Winston is hosting with his usual warmth and enthusiasm. and then the hypnotized supers, including Frozone, begin to move. What follows is one of the most elaborate and chaotic sequences in the movie. The hypnotized heroes, under Evelyn's command, begin menacing the world leaders. Frozone creates ice barriers that trap people. The other supers use their abilities in threatening ways. Winston is completely confused and horrified. His dream is being turned into a nightmare in real time, and he does not understand how or why. At the same time, the government has been monitoring the situation from the outside. Military ships have the yacht in their sights. There is pressure on officials to authorize using force against the yacht to prevent what appears to be a superhero attack on diplomats. The countdown to a military response is ticking. Bob, Violet, Dash, and Jack arrive on the yacht in controlled chaos. Their plan, such as it is, consists mainly of go find mom and stop anything bad from happening. It is not a sophisticated plan, but it is an honest one. Violet and Dash immediately take on the job of dealing with the hypnotized heroes. This is genuinely difficult because these are not villains. These are people who are being controlled and who are not responsible for their own actions. Violet and Dash have to incapacitate them without hurting them, which requires creativity and restraint. The sequence where Dash is running at full speed through the ship while Violet throws force field bubbles around hypnotized supers to contain them is visually spectacular. They are working as a genuine team, communicating, covering each other, adapting on the fly. They are not the bickering siblings who drove each other crazy at the beginning of the movie. They are incredibles. Jack left in his carrier seat for approximately 30 seconds before escaping it because he is a baby with many powers, ends up being a wild card participant in the battle. He phases through walls and pops up in unexpected places. He fires laser beams at things that seem threatening to him. He transforms into his heavy metal form and becomes effectively immovable when someone tries to move him. He manages through a combination of genuine instinct and complete accident to contribute meaningfully to several key moments in the battle. Bob, meanwhile, has to fight against his own instincts. His natural tendency is to use his strength to solve problems. But on a yacht full of innocent diplomats and confused hypnotized heroes and his own children who are working in the space, he cannot just punch his way through everything. He has to be more careful and more strategic than comes naturally to him. There is a moment where Frozone, under full hypnosis, faces Bob in a direct confrontation. Frozone creates an ice shield and prepares to attack. Bob and Frozone have been friends for decades. Frozone is the best friend of his adult life. And Bob has to face him as an opponent right now and he cannot hesitate. He manages to break the hypnosis by disrupting the goggles Frozone is wearing. And the moment Frozone comes back to himself and realizes what he was doing, the expression on his face is one of the most complex emotional beats in the film. While all of this is happening on the yacht, Helen has managed to partially break through the hypnosis. It is not a clean or complete break. It is more like the person inside fighting against the programming, becoming aware that they are not in control and pushing back against it. Elastigirl's fundamental self-reliance and stubbornness, which Evelyn herself identified as qualities she admired, are exactly the qualities that make her harder to keep hypnotized. Helen gets the goggles off. Her vision clears. She understands what has happened and what is currently happening. She does not have time for the full horror of the betrayal to hit her yet. That will come later. Right now, she has a job to do. Evelyn has been watching everything go according to plan and is now executing her exit strategy. She has a stealth jet waiting at the top of the yacht. She is going to slip away while everything burns behind her. She will disappear. The footage will speak for itself. Her plan will succeed, but Helen is coming. The pursuit through the upper decks of the yacht is intense and physical. Helen and Evelyn are not fighting in an abstract action movie sense. This is personal. Evelyn is the person Helen trusted most in the recent past, and Evelyn is someone who genuinely respected Helen and chose to betray her anyway because her ideology required it. That combination of real connection and complete betrayal makes this confrontation feel different from a typical hero versus villain fight. Evelyn gets into her jet. Helen grabs onto the outside of it and holds on as it launches. They are in the air now, moving at speed, thousands of feet above the cold ocean. Evelyn is rational and calm even now. She continues to make her argument to Helen from inside the cockpit. She says she is not wrong. She says that dependency on supers has cost people their lives and will continue to cost people their lives. She says she actually likes Helen and respects her, but that the principle is bigger than personal feelings. Helen counters from outside the jet by doing something remarkable. She manages to get into the jet. In the confined space of the cockpit, two skilled and determined women fight for control of the aircraft. It is tight and fierce, and neither of them has a clear advantage. Evelyn ejects Helen. She uses the cockpit controls to open the canopy, and Helen is blown out of the aircraft at high altitude over the freezing water below. Here is where Helen's powers are used in the most spectacular single moment of the film. She is falling, the ocean is impossibly far below. There is no one coming to save her. She cannot fly. She cannot call for help. She stretches herself. She spreads her arms and legs and body outward, flattening and widening herself into a parachute shape that catches the air. She falls, but she falls slowly. She is using her own body as a deceleration device. And then, while doing this, she looks up at the jet above her and she reaches upward and she stretches one arm, then another, grabbing parts of the aircraft's undercarriage and holding on and pulling herself back up even as she continues to slow herself. And then she does something audacious. She uses her body, stretched and wrapped around key parts of the aircraft structure, to begin disabling the jet piece by piece. She is using herself as both a parachute and a wrench simultaneously. The jet breaks apart around her. Evelyn cannot escape. The aircraft comes down. Evelyn is arrested. She goes quietly. She does not beg or plead. She continues to believe she was right even as the handcuffs go on. She just looks at Helen with something that might be regret but is definitely not remorse. The world leaders are safe. The summit can be completed. And the law is changed. The signing of the international agreement happens. Superheroes are legal. The law that forced them underground is gone. The years of hiding and pretending and being afraid are over. They can be who they are. The Parr family stands outside a beautiful new home that Winston has arranged for them. He feels responsible for everything that happened and he wants to do something concrete to make it right. The house is perfect, big enough for all of them, in a good neighborhood, a real home. Bob and Helen stand together looking at it. They have been through a lot in a short time. Bob stayed home and learned things about himself and his family that he had not taken the time to learn before. Helen went out and reclaimed a part of herself that she had thought was gone forever. Their marriage is not just intact, it is genuinely stronger than it was before because they both showed each other something they had not fully shown before. Violet, in the most carefully earned emotional moment of the whole movie, goes on her date with Tony. She shows up at the restaurant. He is already there. She knocks something over immediately. He knocks something over too. They laugh. It is deeply awkward and completely sweet. Tony does not know she is a super. He does not know why this feels so significant to her. He just sees a girl he likes who showed up. For Violet, this moment is about reclaiming something that was taken from her, not through confrontation or demands, but through showing up and choosing to be present. It is quiet and small, and it is perfect. And then the car appears. Criminals, speeding away from the police, heading straight toward the family. Dash wants to go. Helen looks at Bob. Bob gives the decision to Helen, and Helen smiles and says, "Okay." The family moves. All of them, Jack floating in his little suit, Dash already blurring at the edges from speed, Violet's hands coming up to generate a field, Bob cracking his knuckles, Helen stretching forward already. They go as one. The screen cuts to black. It is an ending that says exactly one thing: they are ready. Whatever comes next, they are ready for it. Character analysis. The characters in this film are so carefully written and performed that they deserve more than a summary. They deserve a real examination of who they are, what they want, what they fear, and how they change. Bob's journey in this film is one of the most honest portrayals of male ego adjustment that you will find in any genre of movie, animated or otherwise. He is a man who has tied his sense of worth to his public role as a hero. When that role was taken from him by the law, he found a substitute in his family, being the strong one, the protector, the man of the house. That was a different kind of heroism, but it still kept him central. Now that is being complicated again. Helen is doing the public heroism, and he is in a role that does not have a clear hierarchy. There is no strongest member of a parenting team. There is no most important contributor to homework, help, and bedtime routines and diaper changes. The skills he is best at, physical strength, tactical thinking, determined action under pressure, have limited applications in a motel room with a screaming baby and a confused 10-year-old's math problems. He is exhausted throughout the middle section of the film in a very specific and recognizable way. It is the exhaustion of someone who is working very hard at something they are not good at, who cannot ask for help because asking for help would feel like admitting they cannot do this, and who is also watching someone else succeed brilliantly at the thing they have always seen as their own defining gift. His jealousy of Helen is real, and it is shown with nuance. It is not a destructive or resentful jealousy. He does not want her to fail. He wants her to succeed, but he also, in quiet moments when the kids are asleep and he is alone with the television coverage of her latest triumph, feels the ache of wanting to be the one out there. That ache is very human and very relatable. His moment of growth comes not in a big dramatic way, but in a series of small recognitions. The moment he calls Edna for help is a moment of choosing to get help rather than struggle alone. The moment he develops a communication system with Jack rather than just trying to contain the baby's powers is a moment of creative parenting that uses his problem solving mind in a new context. The moment he sits up all night studying new math without anyone telling him to is a moment of pure dedication that has nothing to do with heroism and everything to do with love. By the end of the film, when he tells Dash to wait for his mother's signal before they engage, he is demonstrating something that would have been impossible for him at the beginning of the story. He is actively deferring to Helen. Not because he was told to, and not even because he decided to in an abstract principled way, but because he genuinely understands that this family works best when everyone in it is valued equally. Helen's arc is a reclamation story. She reclaims a part of herself that she put away for a very long time. But the film is careful not to make this a simple story about a woman who was suppressed now being liberated. It is more complicated and more honest than that. Helen chose to become the practical protective parent. She was not forced into it in a way that she resented or that was imposed on her against her will. She made a series of choices, each of them reasonable and loving, that gradually accumulated into a life where Elastigirl was more and more distant from who she was day to day. She became Mrs. Parr because Mrs. Parr was what her family needed her to be. But something was lost in that process. Not dramatically lost, not in a way that made her miserable, more quietly lost. The way something you were very good at gradually fades from your hands when you stop practicing it. The way a language slowly becomes less fluent when you stop speaking it. When she puts the suit back on for Winston's campaign, she does not immediately feel like herself again. There is a sequence, brief but important, where she gets on the motorcycle and hesitates. She is rusty, she is not sure she can still do this, and then she does it. And it comes back. The muscle memory is still there. The instincts are still there. They were just waiting. Her independent storyline gives the film a chance to show Helen as a protagonist in her own right rather than as one half of the couple or as the mother of the family. She is a brilliant and capable hero who thinks creatively and acts decisively. The train sequence, the investigation, the fight in the apartment, all of these establish her as fully worthy of the spotlight she is finally being given. Her relationship with Evelyn is genuinely meaningful to her before it becomes a source of betrayal. Evelyn sees her clearly. She knows about the dual life. She understands the specific kind of discipline it takes to be both extraordinary and ordinary depending on the context. She treats Helen as an equal and as a professional. For someone who has spent years being seen mainly as Bob's wife or the kid's mother, that recognition means something. The betrayal, therefore, hits harder than a simple plot twist would. This was not just a villain fooling her. This was someone she trusted specifically because that person saw her truly and valued what they saw. And using that specific form of trust as the mechanism for betrayal is one of the more sophisticated emotional moves the film makes. Violet is the character in Incredibles 2 who carries the most emotional truth about a specific human experience, which is the experience of being a teenager who has spent their whole life hiding who they really are and who is just beginning to imagine a different way of living. She has been invisible in the most literal possible way. Her power is invisibility. She can make herself completely disappear from the visual field. And this power is a perfect metaphor for the social strategy of a shy, self conscious teenager who does not believe she is worthy of being seen. She makes herself small, she turns invisible in social situations. She avoids notice because notice feels dangerous. Tony Ridinger represents something new. He noticed her. He saw something in her and responded to it. The fact that he asked her out was not just nice, it was evidence that she did not have to hide, that being seen could be okay. And then the memory erasure happened, and the evidence was destroyed. Not just the date opportunity, but the actual proof that being seen could be okay. The moment was taken from her and replaced with nothing, which is much harder to bear than rejection would have been. Rejection is honest. This was erasure. Her anger at Bob is fully justified and the film honors it. He should have told her. He made a decision to protect her from information that affected her directly, and that choice, however well intentioned, was wrong. It was the same mistake the government made. Both of them decided what was best for Violet without asking Violet. When she puts the suit back on at the end, it is important to understand what that choice represents. It is not her forgiving the system or agreeing that her identity as a super should come before her desire for normal life. It is her choosing, on her own terms, to use who she is in service of something she loves. She is going to save her mother. She is going to help her family. She is making that choice because it is hers to make, and that is the key difference. By the time she goes on the date with Tony, she has completed something. She is not fully resolved. She is still figuring things out. But she showed up. She decided to try again. And that small act of courage is exactly as significant as anything that happened in the big battle. It might seem odd to devote serious analytical attention to a baby who cannot speak, but Jack is one of the most interesting characters in the film in terms of what he represents and how he functions in the story. His powers are the most extreme of any member of the family. He can do things none of them can do. And the reason for this in narrative terms is very clear. He has not been told what he cannot do. Every other member of the family grew up in a world where they had to hide their powers, had to limit themselves, had to accept constraints, both external and internal. Jack grew up in this world too, but he is a baby and he has not absorbed the limiting messages yet. He does not know he is supposed to be less than he is. He just is what he is completely. His relationship with Edna is one of the film's purest pleasures. Edna is a character who has built her entire identity around precision and control and absolute mastery of her craft. She meets a creature who operates entirely without those things, and she's enchanted because underneath her control is genuine love for extraordinary things. And Jack Jack is the most extraordinary thing she has ever encountered. His contribution to the final battle is also narratively significant. The family that could not figure out what to do with this unpredictable baby ends up winning in part because of him. The thing that seemed like the biggest liability turns out to be an asset. That is not an accident. Brad Bird is saying something about how the qualities we see as problems, the unpredictable ones, the ones that do not fit neatly into our plans, are sometimes the ones that save us. Lucius Best has always been a supporting character rather than a lead, but he is drawn with enough specificity to feel like a fully realized person. His friendship with Bob is genuine and old and comfortable in the way that the best long friendships are. They do not need to explain themselves to each other. They understand each other in the shorthand of people who have been through significant experiences together. His hypnotized state in the final act is disturbing precisely because we know him so well. The flat robotic quality in his voice and the absence of personality in his face when he is controlled is a stark contrast to his normal warmth and humor. It is a form of horror that works because it targets our emotional investment in him as a character. His recovery from the hypnosis and the brief moment where he realizes what he was doing or almost doing is one of the more quietly gutting moments of the film. He is a proud man and a good man, and the idea that his body was used to threaten innocent people will sit with him long after the physical encounter is over. The film operates on several thematic levels simultaneously, and none of them feel forced or didactic. They emerge naturally from the characters and situations. Who are you when the role you identified with is taken away? This is the question that haunts Bob through the whole film. It haunts Helen too in a different way, and it haunts Violet in the teenage version of the same question. Bob's answer is built slowly through the domestic sequences. He starts to discover that there are forms of competence and strength that do not involve physical power. Managing a baby's unpredictable supernatural abilities requires patience and creativity. Helping a child learn something difficult requires empathy and dedication. Being emotionally present for a teenager in pain requires the ability to sit with your own guilt and still offer something genuine. These are not skills Bob arrived at this film with. He learned them over the course of the story, and that learning is itself the answer to his identity question. He is not just Mr. Incredible. He is also the man who stayed up all night to learn his son's homework. He is the man who called for help when he needed it. He is the man who put his family first even when it cost him something personal. The film's treatment of what happens when the mother goes to work and the father stays home is handled with a specificity and honesty that elevates it above being simply a commentary and makes it a real story. Both Bob and Helen face genuine challenges specific to their switched positions, and neither of them is let off the hook. Bob faces the practical challenges of parenting, which are presented without condescension as genuinely difficult and as work that matters. The film does not make his struggles funny in a way that trivializes parenting or that suggests he is bad at it because he is a man. He is bad at it because he has not done it before, and he is also doing it alone, which is hard for anyone. Helen faces the working parent's guilt and the specific additional guilt of being a woman who left her children to pursue her professional life. Society still carries the expectation that women who prioritize career are somehow less committed to their children than women who do not. And while the film does not make this explicit, it is present in the subtext of Helen's constant phone calls home and her anxious checking in. What the film ultimately says is that both of them are right to do what they are doing, and both of them are struggling with something real, and both of them are getting through it with love and imperfect grace. That is what working families look like. The Screenslaver's argument is the film's most direct engagement with a contemporary social issue, and it is one of the more sophisticated gestures in any animated movie in recent memory. Evelyn's villain plan literally involves using screens to control people and simultaneously involves a monologue about how screens are used to control people. The irony is completely intentional. The film does not fully agree with Evelyn. It thinks she is wrong in her conclusions and worse in her methods. But it does not dismiss the substance of her critique either. The scenes where people are hypnotized by screens have a genuinely uncomfortable resonance when viewed in a world where people walk into traffic while staring at their phones, and where political opinions are shaped by algorithms, and where children spend more time watching other children play games on video than playing games themselves. By making the person who articulates this critique also the film's villain, Brad Bird is not endorsing the critique as wrong. He is warning about what happens when a legitimate observation about society becomes a justification for control and manipulation. Evelyn is not wrong about dependency. She is wrong about what to do about it. And that distinction matters. The film builds toward a vision of heroism that is not about having powers. It is about showing up. It is about being present for the people who need you. It is about making the unglamorous choice to do the difficult thing because it is right. Bob's heroism in the middle section of the film is not flashy. It does not involve punching or destroying. It involves staying awake, asking for help, learning something new, listening to a hurt teenager instead of defending himself. Helen's heroism includes a spectacular train stop and the fight with Evelyn, but it also includes the phone calls home, the genuine effort to stay connected even across the distance. The refusal to be fully present in one life at the cost of the other. Violet's heroism is picking her suit out of the trash. That is it. That is the whole thing. Everything else follows from that one choice. Filmmaking and technical details. Brad Bird made this film with an eye for visual storytelling that goes far beyond what most animated movies attempt. Every space in the film has been designed to communicate something about the emotional reality of the characters in it. The motel room at the beginning is warm but cramped. The color palette is orange and tan and slightly tired. It is the visual equivalent of feeling stuck. Helen's apartment in New Urbem is spacious and sleek and blue-white. It is beautiful but also a little cold. It is the visual equivalent of freedom without warmth. Bob's house becomes progressively messier and more chaotic through the middle section as he falls further behind in managing everything. The visual disorder of the space tracks his internal disorder perfectly. The Screenslaver's apartment is designed as a sensory assault. It is meant to overwhelm. The combination of multiple screens at different frequencies and the strobing lights is a genuine disorienting experience even for the viewer. This is filmmaking that puts you inside the character's experience rather than just showing it to you. The yacht in the third act is enormous and elegant and then becomes a scene of chaos, which is a deliberate contrast. The beautiful and ordered thing being torn apart is a visual metaphor for what Evelyn is doing to Winston's dream and to the possibility of a better world. The animation technology had advanced so dramatically in the 14 years between films that the Pixar team could do things in Incredibles 2 that were physically impossible in 2004. Water simulation, cloth simulation, crowd simulation, the rendering of hair and fabric and light all reached new levels of fidelity. The sequences on and around the water at the end of the film, with spray and reflections and moving fabric, are technically astonishing. The soundtrack and music. Michael Giacchino's return to score the sequel was one of the best decisions made in the production. His original score for the first Incredibles was one of the great animated film soundtracks, a homage to the jazz-infused orchestral music of 1960s spy films and adventure movies. John Barry and Henry Mancini were clear influences, and Giacchino took that inspiration and created something entirely his own. For the sequel, he expanded every element. The main theme is bigger and more elaborate. The Elastigirl theme, which plays during her solo missions, has an energy and independence that separates it from the full family sound, reflecting her independent journey in the story. When the full family theme finally arrives in the third act, with everyone fighting together, the musical payoff is real. You feel the reunion in the music before you fully process it visually. The Screenslaver's musical identity is cold and electronic and rhythmically unnerving. It stands in deliberate contrast to the warm jazz of the heroes. The moment the Screenslaver theme intrudes on a scene, you feel the temperature drop. There is also an emotional tenderness in some of the smaller moments. A quiet version of the family theme plays during Bob's overnight study session with Dash's homework, and it has a quality that might make you tear up without entirely knowing why. It is the music of a parent trying very hard, and Giacchino finds exactly that feeling. Every performance in this film deserves to be discussed at length because they are all so specifically right. Craig T. Nelson brings a physical quality to his voice work that few voice actors achieve. You can hear the size and weight of Bob Parr in the way Nelson inhabits the role. When Bob is frustrated, it is not a light frustration. It is the frustration of a very large, very strong person trying to be patient. When Bob is tender, it is a quiet tenderness that has real effort behind it. The scene where he apologizes to Violet is one of the best pieces of voice acting in the film, two short sentences that carry enormous weight. Holly Hunter is simply one of the best actresses alive, and she demonstrates that in animated form just as convincingly as in live action. Her voice has a natural authority but also a genuine vulnerability underneath it. Helen is someone who is used to being competent, and the moments when she is not sure, when she is suspicious of her own intuitions about Evelyn, when she calls home because she just needs to hear her kids' voices, these moments are beautifully calibrated by Hunter's performance. Sarah Vowell captures the specific quality of teenage pain with remarkable accuracy. Her Violet sounds like a real teenager, which is not as easy as it sounds. She has the cadences of someone who feels everything very intensely but does not have the full vocabulary yet to express it clearly. Her voice cracks at exactly the right moments without ever feeling performed. Catherine Keener as Evelyn is the revelation of the casting. Keener never sounds like a villain. She sounds like a person you would want to have a long conversation with, someone intelligent and thoughtful and honest. The fact that her honesty and thoughtfulness are in service of a terrible plan is what makes her dangerous. She does not perform evil. She embodies a twisted form of integrity, someone who genuinely believes they are right and is willing to do terrible things in service of that belief. Samuel L. Jackson could play Frozone in his sleep at this point, and he does not. He brings genuine presence and warmth to the role every time he is on screen. His post-hypnosis moment is genuinely powerful because Jackson plays the confusion and the horror of what Frozone realizes he was almost made to do with complete commitment, box office and cultural impact. Incredibles 2 opened on the 15th of June 2018 in the United States. The opening weekend numbers were historic. It made over $182 million in its first 3 days in North America, which at that time was the largest opening weekend in history for an animated film. This was not just a successful movie, this was a cultural event. Internationally, the film was equally massive. It opened to huge numbers in markets around the world. By the end of its theatrical run, it had earned over $1.24 billion worldwide, making it one of the 10 highest grossing animated films of all time and one of only a small number of animated films ever to cross the $1 billion mark. These numbers speak to multiple things. They speak to the genuine love people had for the first Incredibles and the 14 years of anticipation that had built up. They speak to the quality of the marketing campaign. They speak to the timing of the release, which positioned it as the major family film of the summer. And they speak to the quality of the film itself, which generated enormous word of mouth from opening night. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film received a fresh rating in the high 90s, meaning the overwhelming consensus of professional critics was extremely positive. The critical praise was specific and earned. Reviewers noted the sophistication of the themes, the quality of the action sequences, the emotional depth of the character arcs, and the technical brilliance of the animation. Audiences gave it similarly high marks on audience score metrics. Viewer responses on opening weekend were enthusiastic. Social media was full of quotes from the film and celebrations of favorite moments. The Jack Jack raccoon fight became a widely shared clip almost immediately. The film also had a notable cultural impact in terms of the conversations it generated outside of pure entertainment discussion. The gender dynamic, with the father staying home and the mother going to work, generated genuine public discussion about how media represents family structures. Several opinion pieces were written about the film's treatment of working mothers and stay at home fathers and what it said about changing social realities. This kind of conversation, where an animated movie becomes a legitimate starting point for cultural dialogue, is not common, and it speaks to the film's engagement with real themes, criticisms, and honest weaknesses. An honest assessment of the film requires acknowledging where it falls short as well as where it succeeds. The most common criticism from viewers and critics is that the villain reveal is somewhat predictable. Evelyn's arc is telegraphed early enough that attentive viewers will have strong suspicions about her before the reveal is made explicit. Her slightly too knowing reactions to events, her subtle undermining of Winston's idealism, her pointed comments about dependency and screens, all of these things add up to a reading that some viewers will complete well before the film intends them to. This does not make the reveal bad, but it does reduce the impact somewhat compared to a reveal that comes as a complete surprise. A second criticism is that the third act moves quickly in a way that leaves some narrative threads feeling slightly underdeveloped. The new supers we meet aboard the yacht, Wyatt, and the others are introduced with enough personality to make you interested in them, but not enough development to make their fates in the battle feel fully earned. They feel like characters who were intended for more screen time and who were compressed in the editing process. In a longer film or a mini-series format, these characters would have room to breathe. A third criticism, which is more of a structural observation than a flaw, is that the film never quite reaches the emotional heights of the original. The first Incredibles had several genuinely devastating moments that hit adult viewers in ways that required recovery time. The sequel is warmer and more comedic and does not attempt the same emotional risk taking. Some viewers felt this was the right choice given that the first film had already done that work. Others felt it left the sequel feeling like a slightly safer version of the original's daring. Both readings are valid. The domestic comedy sections, while excellent, also occasionally feel slightly extended in a way that shifts the film's pacing. Some viewers felt the balance tipped a little too far toward the home storyline at the expense of the superhero storyline. Or alternatively, that the transition back into action mode at the end was slightly rushed because of how much time was spent on domestic material. This is a pacing observation rather than a fundamental problem, and different viewers will have different responses depending on which elements they engaged with most strongly. None of these criticisms undermine the film's overall quality. They are the observations of people who engaged seriously with the movie and found specific places where it could have been stronger. That kind of criticism is a sign of a film worth taking seriously. The ending of Incredibles 2 is deliberately and beautifully simple. After everything that happened, after the complexity of the identity journeys and the family disruptions and the villain's philosophical arguments and the enormous battle on the yacht, the film closes on two very simple images. The first is Violet on her date. Tony does not know she is a super. He does not know that she just helped save the world. He just sees a girl he likes who showed up for dinner and knocked over a glass. The smallness of this moment after the enormity of everything preceding it is intentional and perfect. It says that the most important things are often the smallest ones. Violet's bravery in showing up for this date is not less impressive than her bravery in putting the suit on. They are the same quality expressed in different contexts. The second is the family chasing the car. It is quick and joyful and conclusive. The family is together. They are legal. They are going towards something instead of hiding from something. That simple reversal of direction from hiding to charging forward encapsulates the whole arc of both films. The film does not show them catching the car. It does not show the aftermath. It does not tie every loose end. It simply shows them moving forward together, and that is enough. The world at the end of Incredibles 2 is genuinely different from the world at the beginning. Supers are now legal worldwide. That changes everything about the premise of these stories. If they are legal, they can be public, they can operate openly, they can have official relationships with governments and police forces, they can have support systems and public recognition. A third film set in this new context would have to grapple with what happens when superheroes are not underground rebels but officially sanctioned forces. What does that do to the freedom and spontaneity that made them heroic in the first place? Are you more or less of a hero when you are working for the government? What happens when political considerations intrude on purely moral decisions? Jack-Jack's powers are still barely understood. A third film could explore a Jack-Jack who is growing up and beginning to develop not just random powers but some sense of control and identity around them. That journey, a child discovering who they are and what they can do, would be a natural continuation of the themes of identity that run through both previous films. Violet is at a stage of life where the question of identity is intensifying rather than resolving. She is entering the years where people make decisions that shape their adult lives. How does being a super affect those decisions? Who does she want to be? There is also the larger world of supers to explore. The vault aboard the Everjust gave us glimpses of heroes who have been living underground for years. Each of them has a story. Each of them has been hiding something real, and now they do not have to hide. What does that sudden freedom look like? Brad Bird has said publicly that he will only return to this world if he finds a story that genuinely needs to be told. Given the richness of the material and the depth of the characters, it seems impossible that such a story does not exist. The question is only whether and when he will find it. Final conclusion. Incredibles 2 is a film that achieves something rare in cinema. It delivers everything that a sequel is supposed to deliver. The return of beloved characters, bigger and more spectacular action, a satisfying continuation of the story, and it also does something that sequels rarely attempt. It genuinely expands the emotional and thematic territory of the original rather than simply repeating it. The first film was about a man who had lost his identity and had to reclaim it while learning to truly value his family. The second film is about a family that is learning to value each member equally, to recognize that every person's identity and growth matters, not just the strongest or the most obviously heroic member. Bob's journey from the self-appointed center of the family to an equal and deeply present partner and parent is a genuinely moving character arc. Helen's reclamation of her professional identity alongside her family identity is a genuinely meaningful feminist story told without ever feeling like a message is being delivered. Violet's coming of age story, with all its teenage pain and hard-won small victories, is one of the most honest depictions of adolescence in any animated film. The action is spectacular, the humor is consistent and earned. The voice performances are among the best in animated film history. The score is extraordinary. The visual design is meticulous and purposeful. Every technical aspect of the production represents the highest level of its craft. Does it match the original? That question is ultimately less interesting than whether it deserves to exist alongside the original, and the answer to that question is absolutely yes. Incredibles 2 is a worthy continuation of one of the best animated films ever made. It has things to say. It says them with humor and action and genuine emotion. It treats its audience with intelligence and respect. And it gives you a family that feels real in a way that animated families very rarely manage. It is worth watching. It is worth watching more than once. It is worth watching when you are a parent who is struggling to balance your own identity with your family responsibilities, because you will see yourself in Bob and Helen and you will feel less alone. It is worth watching when you are a teenager who feels like your real self is being suppressed by the expectations and constraints around you, because you will see yourself in Violet and you will feel understood. It is worth watching when you are a child who just wants to see incredible people doing incredible things, because you will get exactly that and more. 14 years is a long time to wait for a sequel. Incredibles 2 was worth every year of it. And wherever Brad Bird is right now, and whatever the next incredible story turns out to be, the world will be ready when it comes. These characters have a home in audiences' hearts that will not fade. They are too real and too true and too loud for that. The Parr family is still out there, still charging forward together, and so are we.